This is Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, where we rank every episode of the Star Trek franchise, and I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Today's block of episodes are likely to be controversial. Some of these are great television, and some aren't. We're going to see some Voyager and DS9, but I wouldn't consider these episodes the worst of their series, because the one thing they all have in common, they're not quite Star Trek. Starting us off is number 732, The Harada MacGuffin, or The Big Goodbye. Trek's first foray into the holodeck episode goes just as poorly as one might expect given the track record of holodeck stories. Picard is burnt out learning the cultural greeting of a secretive race that he must recite perfectly, or war might ensue or something. Troy suggests he take some R&R on the new and improved holodecks. He takes the opportunity to run the Dixon Hill detective program for the first time, and is in flat-out disbelief at how real it all is. He's so taken that he invites Beverly, Data, and the ship's historian to join him. They meander around the cliché crime drama for a while before the Harada scan the ship and inadvertently disrupt ship's systems, including the holodeck safeties and the ability to call for the exit. The rest of the runtime is spent by the crew trying to get them out, and Picard tries to outsmart a 30s gangster cliché through logic. When they're finally freed, Picard speaks the weirdest alien sentence ever in Trek. Being the first holodeck episode, there's a lot of physical rules that hadn't been quite canonized yet, like characters and objects disappearing as soon as they leave the arch, or holo characters perceiving the uniforms they're wearing. There's lots of out-of-time jokes, like Crusher swallowing gum and not seeming to know what makeup is. Also, another Crusher and Picard romance moment that still leads nowhere. We've seen Wes and Geordi working outside the holodeck most of the episode, and when the doors finally open, no one's in the corridor. This feels like a TOS episode if it had a holodeck. What is Trek in this episode is bad Trek, and the rest is abysmally not quite Trek. Coming up, Snake Eyes at number 731, The House Goes Bust. Or The Royale. An episode that even if it were more Trek would still be right about here on the list. The opening of Picard trying to solve an 800-year-old math problem could have been the redeeming quality of this episode. Except that this problem was finally solved 4 years after the episode aired. The Enterprise investigates debris in orbit of a planet that has Earth origin, and finds spaceship debris bearing the NASA logo. The mystery grows deeper when they find a zone of breathable air in a structure on a planet with no possibility of supporting life. For Season 2 TNG, we're actually off to a good start for a mysterious plot, until Riker and away team beam into a black soundstage with nothing but a revolving door in the emptiness. When they enter, they find themselves in a boutique Vegas casino filled with mystery cliches. When they find out they've lost communication with the ship, they try to leave, but no exit will allow them to. Upon further investigation of the hotel, they find the mummified remains of a human that had been aboard the NASA craft. They find out from the man's diary that the craft encountered a race of aliens that unintentionally killed all the crew except this guy, and for some reason set him up on this random planet and created him a world to survive in based on a badly written novel on board. The episode then pokes fun at itself about being a badly written cliché novel, and Riker and team surmise that they need to play out the story to escape. They set Data up to run the craps table to the tune of more than $12 million, which no reasonable casino would ever give that amount of action, but which is enough to buy the property and end the novel and be able to walk out the front door. This episode pokes enough fun at itself, and I don't think I need to give it any more help. Beaming in from parts unknown is number 730. Gary 7, Intergalactic Man of Mystery. Or Assignment Earth. Welcome to the one that is well and truly not Star Trek, to the point that what little Trek is in the episode actively gets in the way of a halfway decent 60s secret agent TV pilot. When it looked like Trek was only going to get 2 short-lived seasons, creator Gene Roddenberry started working on the idea for his next project. With the secret agent and spy genres taking off and captivating audiences in the 60s, it seemed Gene's next logical step Rather than going through the hassle of getting the funding for a standalone pilot, he used the last episode of TOS Season 2 as a backdoor pilot to a show that never was. In what shows the Federation having no temporal prime directive in the 2260s, the Enterprise is sent back to 1960s Earth to observe humanity launch orbital nuclear missile platforms. While there, they intercept the transporter beam of a human that had been taken and trained by aliens. Enterprise takes him prisoner briefly, but then he and his traveling cat Isis escape. Carrie is there to find out what happened to other operatives on Earth that hadn't reported in and complete their mission of stopping the launch of the weapons platform. He finds out the former operatives had hired a secretary that would have been his comic relief sidekick, kinda like Constance Goodhart and Captain Proton. Because in early sci-fi, who's going to believe a woman is good at any job but being a secretary? By the end, the Enterprise crew tries to stop him again before realizing that they're just getting in his way and they need him to self-destruct this thing before it kills millions. We find out at the very end that Gary Seven's cat Isis can transform into a real Catwoman. This seriously sets up a story that in 1960s TV terms seems like it could have made for better TV than what Trekkies would get out of TOS Season 3. But this episode is decidedly not Star Trek. Flowing in like a tumbleweed made of photons at 7:29 is Brent Spiner, the android that shot me. Or Fistful of Datas. Directed by Patrick Stewart. Check. Season 6 TNG. Check. Brent Spiner acting at a high level? Check. How could I possibly say that this isn't Trek or belongs near the bottom of its rankings? For starters, I'm laughing at this the whole time and not at the jokes that are the backbone of the story, but actively at how absurd and cliché this is. When nearly all the runtime is taken up on the holodeck, set in a purposeful cliché Western story, and then every cliché bit of Trek like the holodeck safety's off and something that can kill a main character, so Worf reluctantly spends time with his kid in a Reg Barkley programmed Western holo fantasy playing the sheriff of a rowdy 1800s Western United States town. Meanwhile, Geordi tries hooking Data up to the ship's systems to see if he can function as a backup when the main computer's offline. They inadvertently mess up Data with characters from the Western holodeck program, and he messes up minor ship systems like replicators and data retrieval. Back on the holodeck, the characters start turning into Data and Alexander gets kidnapped. By the ending cliché gunfight in the street, all the characters are Data right up till the end. I think the writers did a better job writing the character of Durango for Marina Sirtis than they did writing Troy. I'm also really glad when they leave it open at the end for more Western fun, that they never go back. Coasting in on fumes is number 728. Y2K hype, or 1159. This is an episode for its release date and to never again be truly relevant. It was released just before the new millennium in 1999 to purely capture the nostalgia of the changing of the millennium. In poring over some random databases, Janeway discovers an ancestor she had idolized was only a minor obscure person in history. We see the struggles and recounts played by Kate Mulgrew of how her ancestor had a part in getting an early version of Farpoint Station built for the purposes of mostly being a giant mall and self-contained biosphere. We see that when she doesn't like the cookies she bought at a gas station, she decides she should shack up with a more stable bookstore owner with the last name Janeway. And the rest is history. Seriously, I've got nothing further for this one. It's a snooze fest disconnected from the Trek world. Popping out foul at number 727, we have Cisco on the bench. Or Take Me Out to the Holosuite. Before someone accuses me of not liking baseball or not getting the game, I'd like to mention I've held a subscription to MLB.TV for 6 years and enjoy baseball immensely. One of my biggest pet peeves with this is the scene where Nog can't figure out which Vulcan on the bench to tag because the runner is out automatically when they're more than 3 feet outside the base path. I even kinda like this episode, it has redeeming qualities. But too much filler, and Cisco getting more fired up about a baseball game than we see him about the ongoing Dominion War, earns this a spot in the block of episodes that aren't quite Trek. The station is visited by the starship Tecumseh, whose Vulcan captain sets up a side of Vulcans we haven't really seen portrayed before this in Trek. The arrogant Vulcan that masks contempt and ignorance under a cool Vulcan exterior, but would become the defining characteristic of the race going into Enterprise. Turns out he and Ben had a rivalry in their academy days that's persisted through the years. He challenges Sisko to meet he and his crew of Vulcans on the field of baseball for a battle of pride. The middle third of the runtime is one giant montage of the DS9 cast training to play baseball. Sisko acts way out of character and kicks Rom off the team. They end up losing the game, but after Rom is reinstated, he bunts the only run they put on the board and then proceed to prove the smug Vulcan's point about manufactured triumph. The one Trek thing we get out of this episode is the Federation anthem. I, and I think many fans, would pay big money for the signed baseball from the end, and in my research don't know where it ended up. The best theories are that any number of the producers that were baseball fans ended up with it. Cashing in at number 726, we have Ocean Space 9, or badda-bing, badda-bang. In a 7th season full of action, we have 2 back-to-back otherwise fun episodes of television that are not quite Trek. Nowhere is this more apparent than the way Ben Sisko is portrayed in these episodes. In the last, he was not very nice to the people around him, and in this one, he's angry for seemingly the wrong reasons, and neither feels like the character of Ben Sisko to me. By his logic in this episode, he shouldn't enjoy baseball because it was once segregated. Anyway, the Vic's Lounge Holosuite program has a surprise in it where the casino is taken over by a bunch of gangsters, and the rest of the runtime is a cliche mashup of the 2 movies Casino and Ocean's 11. Seriously, I'm not going to finish describing the plot. Go watch the episode and/or those 2 movies. It's really fun, and at the end, Avery Brooks gets to show us what a wonderful musician he is singing with Vic. I love gangster movies, I love DS9, and I love satire. But this satirical gangster plot with the DS9 cast doesn't do anything to move the Star Trek franchise forward.
Ah, computer.
That program is available.
Thanks, Majel. Majel. Thanks, Majel. Majel.
Accessing.
Thanks, Majel.
Picard Mozart Trio, Program 1.
Majel.
Satire in Trek. Satire in Trek.
Why is Christmas so damn hard?
Try that again.
Every single year.
What is that?
What is that?
Maybe you should have studied up on doors a little before you came down here.
I can't get stuck here.
Stuck?
You're not one of them card counting fellas, are you?
We're counting cards.
I'm mostly gonna be doing the slots.
That's the end of little Paulie. I told you to pop big Paulie.
There must have been 24 Peters and Pauls.
Paulie Jr., this is Petey, and this is Pete. No, I mean Paulie. I get confused myself.
It was raining in the city by the bay. A hard rain.
The fog was as thick as hash house oatmeal and twice as cold.
Ain't fed me since I got here. It was a nightmare. God awful smell of meringue.